Tom, Bub, want to at least go ahead and get us started with those rule changes that are potentially on the horizon, because the NCAA Football Rules Committee has their annual meeting, and there are 4 proposals that they're going to be considering. So for those who've not been able to get a chance to take a look at it, they are, 1, no longer allowing consecutive timeouts to ice a kicker. Number 2, the idea that there would be an untimed down at the end of the quarter if there is a defensive penalty, that's going to be getting out of the game. Number 3, having the clock continue to run after a first down. This is going to be the big one, and probably what we're going to end up spending a lot of time discussing in terms of its potential impact. The clock being allowed to run after first downs, except in the final 2 minutes of each half. And then the final one, this one's kind of wild, having the clock continue to run after an incomplete pass once the official has spotted the ball. So clearly we are looking, for a lot of different reasons at either how long a game is or how many plays there are in a game. And so I think that that's as good a place to start as any before we look at the potential impact of these rule change proposals. So Tom, Bud, what stands out about when you're trying to get in the mindset of the motivating factors for this right now?
I think we need to go back to an episode that we did last summer, right? And we had Dennis Dodd on, and Dennis had done some really interesting reporting on some of the data that the NCAA future committee or whatever the committee was that they had assembled to figure out the future of the sport. Transformation committee, maybe it was, and Dennis. Let's just roll the clips from this summer and here, let's remember what Dennis had told us about this. I think this is really where it's coming from.
And they're significant. And I thought it was interesting the way you laid it out, because I think this is a critical decision-making process and how it could impact a lot more than just player safety. I mean, it could impact the length of games, so much that goes into it. The story's great, well-researched. What were some of your bigger takeaways that you learned from there, and what direction do you think we're headed?
Well, a couple of things. The people in charge, the stakeholders, the rules committee, the commissioners now have taken this semantic approach to shortening games or protecting players or both. They're calling it exposures now for whatever reason. It used to be snaps, plays.
Oh, it's a COVID thing. Yeah, use exposure. I mean, it's everyone's buzzword now.
So an exposure to me signifies, you're exposing your body to some sort of harm every time, you have a football play. Duh, we know that. But that's what they're calling it. And so by framing it that way, they're making it a health and safety issue. Now, what is less important now these days is length of games. Multiple people that I talked to for this story, and I think a couple of them they're quoted are saying, I'm less worried about the length of game than what happens within the game. That used to be a thing. But I think what's come back, and I think Danny, you agree with this, is that the fans don't necessarily care. They care about the commercials, watching on TV, the delay in games between the quarters, and they give some bank president a check for $30,000 or something. I think that can be fixed. But what fans love is getting there early, tailgating, staying late, enjoying the day. And that's just become less important. And so the stakeholders now are worried about what happens between the lines. If it shortens a game, it shortens a game. But that's not the number one priority.
They're probably going to make some kind of rule changes, as you noted. It seems like there's an urgency that they're showing now. And I don't want to just come out and say they never cared about player safety before, but in many cases, they just kind of paid lip service to it. And by they, I mean, the NCAA Rules Committee and whatnot. Why now? Why do they all of a sudden care about player safety so much?
It's a liability thing. They won't admit it, and the commissioners I talk, well, that's not really part of it. It's a big part of it. I call it the leaky roof theory. You buy a house, and let's say it has a leaky roof. You tell the owners that before I buy this house, you got to fix the roof. So I think before college football goes forward, particularly college football playoff, in whatever form it goes forward in, has to fix the leaky roof. Not many people know this. Still, there are dozens of head trauma lawsuits going on all over the country targeting schools, the NCAA, millions and millions of dollars. It's a reason that I wrote a story last fall about how the rules committee is not going backwards on targeting. We hear all this criticism about targeting. What's not going to happen is to make the penalty lighter. And I think the people in charge are particularly against this flagrant 1, flagrant 2, because it is going to delay the game more. But they're not going backwards on enforcement of it because they're worried about liability. What these trial lawyers have become savvy at, all the research is out there. They now can trace, what they call NCAA negligence on head trauma and student athlete welfare back to the 50s, according to them. If you go backwards on targeting, if you don't address this right now, then you're going to end up in court for years and years and years. So as college football moves on, as college football transitions to oversight, I think, by the college football playoff, I think they've got to get this piece of it fixed, whatever fixed means. We don't even know if this is going to work. It looks like it might work. But I know I've talked about it with Danny, that, boy, the first down thing is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's what differentiates college football from the pros, and the pros fit nicely into that 3-hour window every Sunday and throughout the week. Does college football want to be that? And in 2006, when they tried to do something similar, it was an absolute disaster. Scoring went down. And I'm talking about, you guys remember this, when they started the clock inexplicably when toe met leather. That, and they shortened half times, which was fine. I think over time they forgot about the halftime thing. We know that. We go to games. It's as long as it is. But that one thing made games shorter. They dropped down to 64 plays per game. That's an NFL pace. It was the lowest scoring season still since 1991, and they completely changed it the next year. This is a very delicate, these are very delicate rule changes that have to be well thought out.
That was Dennis Dodd on top of it. Again, March last year, forecasting exactly what we are dealing with right here in late February of 2023. The litigation and the liability is certainly a part of this, but as we sit on the precipice of college football playoff expansion and hearing some of the comments that we've had from Greg Sankey and other power brokers, is the acknowledgement that if you're going to extend the season, if you're going to add games, then it's almost like funny accounting. Like, we are trying, this is my read. I'm editorializing here. I think that we are trying to take plays out of the game in order to justify adding games on the end of it. Because Dennis Dodd has a story up on CBSSports.com where he says that experts have indicated that, just the first down rule, the clock runs on first downs. Since 1968, the NFL and college have been different in terms of how the clock operates on first downs. If they move to more of an NFL model, obviously with the clock stopping on first downs under 2 minutes, that would be 7 plays per game. 7 plays per game is okay. But if they do the other rule change that is being proposed here, which would be as soon as the official spots the ball, even after an incomplete pass, the clock moves forward, that could be as many as 18 to 20 plays per game impacted here. Clearly, one is less dramatic than the other, but when we're talking about the motivations, I think that the liability and sort of litigation part of this can exist, but as we're looking at what college football future is going to be, I read this as they're doing anything they can, yes, for maybe the TV side, but also to justify what is going to be a 17-game schedule potentially for some teams.
Yeah. It's just, we care about player safety when we can't make millions and millions and millions of dollars off of it. And that's really what it boils down to, because another way to shorten games would be to remove commercial breaks. But God knows we are never going to remove commercial breaks from broadcasts. And you could do the thing where we want to shorten the games because we're asking them to play more games. What's going to have a higher chance of injury? The 5th hit of the season that you take in the 3rd game, or the 18th hit you take in the but I'm saying, like, hits in the third game and hits in the 16th game. The 16th game is going to have more of an impact whether you played a couple fewer plays overall in the course of the season anyway. It's not for player safety. It's not going to change anything. Having to play these games week in and week out and continue practicing and training and being ready to play in the games is going to lead to more injuries overall. And you see it every year now when we get to the playoffs. How many of these teams are full strength?
Without seeing, data on it, I think what Tom says intuitively makes sense. At the very least, this is the power brokers in the sport trying to demonstrate that they understand that there is a safety issue and that they are, taking steps to proactively make the game, safer, quote unquote. I mean, this is something, hey, like, did you guys know about this? Did you do anything about it? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. So that's kind of, I think, the main motivation for this. I mean, there's a lot of implications if all of these rules are passed. I mean,
do we want to jump right to that? Can we have like an honest conversation? Because I think the incomplete pass thing is out the window.
Agreed.
I don't think like what's it? Is it over?
It's 3 dumbass rules in one rule they plan to implement.
Yes.
It's a plant.
Yes.
Yeah. But I will say, like, the back-to-back timeouts freezing the kicker, fine, get rid of it. Who cares? That is annoying. I hate when coaches do that. I don't know. Is there any data that actually proves it's effective? I don't know.
No, it's proven it's not. It does not impact it.
Yeah. So I feel like the one rule they want to get rid of is the stopping after first downs until the final 2 minutes. That's the only rule they're trying to push through. I feel like the other ones are just there to kind of be like, okay, well, no, we can't have this. Okay, how about we compromise and just have this?
Yeah, it's what I do with my children. I'm going to give you like a bad option. I know you don't want, but it's what you want to have 4 options. So look, here's a couple that I know you're not going to pick, so we can get you to go with what's going to be getting us to bedtime.
Exactly. Last night I was like, hey, it's bath time. You want to do this the fun way or the not fun way? And he's like, the not fun way. I'm like, all right, take your shirt off right now. Get in the bath. It's just, yeah. All right. So we want to talk about what a disaster it would be to implement all 4 of these at the same time real quickly?
I mean, quickly, because I truly would be surprised if we get all 4 of them in at once. And I think we have already, didn't we say on the air this is already terrible for Brian Ferentz? Because if all of the rules get passed, then Iowa's only going to have 27 plays per game on offense, and I don't know if they're going to be getting a point per play with that offense.
I think if you actually had all these rules, if all of them passed and were implemented together, I think you would have a reduction in college football scoring of 30%. Right? I mean, it would be significant. You would have a lot of games that are played at that like 21-17 final score because you would, like, you have fewer plays, fewer opportunities to score. You would also have far fewer comebacks, and you would have more upsets at the same time. So with the clock running as fast as it's going to run, and it obviously, like, 1 second, still 1 second, but not as fast as it's going to run, as often as it would run with these proposals, the number of comebacks would be limited because you just can't pull these comebacks off if you're not getting the clock to stop for incomplete passes. And you would also have a lot more upsets because when you have the better team start slowly, it's going to have a harder time coming back as well. And look at basically any small sample thing. This is creating a bigger sample sport and making it into a smaller sample sport within a single game setting, because you're going to go from, probably 65, 68 plays to like 45 if they're all together.
Also, isn't there a real chance that if you did implement these rules, it would just lead to more up-tempo offenses, which would then lead to more of what Dennis called the exposures when we were playing those clips? Because it's going to, there are teams that it's just going to be the more plays that are run, the better our odds of winning the game. And that will just become a strategy again. And
the mental side of the clock running and these 330-pound linemen having to hustle back into position and trying to get going, go. I agree with you. It would create a chaotic scene, which who knows, like maybe that's a good television product, but it is not at all, in my eyes, conducive to player safety. I have a competitive reason why I hate the clock stops on incomplete pass, because if you are trying to nurse a lead, there is strategy involved with your play calling that I enjoy. I enjoy the coaching aspect, trying to figure out what are going to be the plays. We always say your 4-minute offense, your 2-minute offense, your selection of how you handle your play calling would change if there was no longer that penalty of the incomplete pass.
But it could make it better for air raid teams to protect leads.
Well, right. So here's the thing. Your chance of converting via running is not all that great. Running is not as efficient as passing is. If all of a sudden incomplete passes also stop the clock, you're going to see teams basically
also keep the clock running.
Excuse me. Yes. Let me restate this. If all of a sudden incomplete passes keep the clock running, teams with the lead are going to have tremendously more success, not just because they can bleed the clock, but because there's no real downside to throwing the football, which is more efficient than running the football. So they're going to convert at a much higher rate. We are so often, as Chip noted, forced to see the decision between do we run the clock, or do we pass it, which is a higher chance of conversion, but also the downside risk of potentially stopping the clock. If you remove that downside risk, like I said earlier, upsets are going to be reduced by a lot, guys, or especially, comebacks are going to be reduced by a lot. Upsets will probably go up quite a bit.
And also, what's the rule at now, too? Because with first downs, the clock only stops until the ball is placed on some of them, but then it's what is the last few minutes where they stop it altogether until the snap? Is that
Last
like 4 minutes now? No, I'm saying the proposal is 2 minutes. What is it now? Is it the last 4 minutes? I can't remember.
Where it continues to run?
Yeah. Because the clock does run after first downs for a lot of the half.
Once it is spotted, which is what they're suggesting for the incomplete pass.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Which is again, all right. So if we are to remove the incomplete pass and look at, as we mentioned, the one rule that they're really trying to get through here, and if you've got ice in the kicker, I'm cool. That's a waste of our time. Let's get that out of here. That seems like common sense to me. And the untimed down, I reached into my cluttered brain and I was trying to remember. There have been some games that have maybe not the result, but the spread, the result at the pay window has swung on some untimed downs that I remember always gets a good look and gets everybody riled up on a Saturday. But for the most part, I'm okay. That's fine. What changes about college football, if any? I mean, outside of the number of plays being reduced, if we move to more of an NFL model of the clock?
I don't know. It's just the games will get shorter, which is the goal. Because another thing too, we talk about it with the television windows. What's the most attractive thing about the Pac-12 right now? It's the late window. Networks are trying to fill from noon until 2 a.m. every Saturday with football because it gets ratings, it does well. But they also want to make sure they could fit all those games into those windows. So that's what we see with the NFL. The way the NFL staggers its start times with noon, and then it has like 3:20, or I'm sorry, I'm Central, 1, and then 4:25 start times, and then like the 7:25, 7:30 primetime game, because they've got it down to such a science with the way they do their commercial breaks and with the rules. They know that a game, unless it goes to overtime, is probably going to fit in these roles. So I think that is one way you'd see it, where it become more predictable. But while some games go forever, I don't really have a problem with games lasting a long time when they're entertaining. It's the boring games that take forever that are annoying. So as far as that's concerned, that would maybe be possible. As far as be more like the NFL. As far as gameplay, if there are fewer plays in a game, strategically, will that lead to more chances or fewer chances? Will that lead to more extravagant offenses or more vanilla offenses? I don't know. It's hard to really know which direction things would go in that way.
I think it would. I think you're running the triple option becomes less attractive, right?
Yeah.
In terms of holding the football and trying to play keep away, because now everybody can play keep away if you had the passing complete thing. If it's just the clock stops,
let's throw out the passing complete. Let's try to operate with the idea that they are able to get this rule change through. It is approved, and we move to a more NFL similar model with the way the clock runs after first downs.
Are we going to have a 2-minute warning?
No, but the clock does stop.
So they could throw another break in there. So they can throw another commercial break in there for us.
See, for me, it's a coaching thing. Like, this becomes a clock management situation because we could see as many comebacks. We see crazy comebacks in the NFL. We could see maybe as many upsets, though I understand the math argument that variability is one thing, high variance, variance with the increase of plays is going to allow for an upset to occur. So, there is that pesky math that gets in the way of that. But I think that in terms of comebacks and upsets and competition, I don't see much of a change from the college football that exists today. However, an immense amount of responsibility on the coaching staff with the preparation process and what happens on a game day, that you don't blow those timeouts in the third quarter. That like the way that you manage this thing all the way through is going to be much more important, since you no longer have that, that friendly extra clock stoppage that is just getting a first down.
It really specifically changes the math for your game management between minutes 12 and 2 in the fourth quarter, right? When you are deciding, do I punt this ball? Do I go for it? How do I handle this third down that I may need to try to go for, or may need to try to dump it down and set up a manageable fourth down? Your kick, punt, go situations and determinations are going to be changed by this, because you have to figure out, can I play 2 for 1 here? I need to rerun my math to figure out how many stops I can get. How many first downs can I actually allow, right? I need to take an additional, 10 seconds off per each first down allowed, because the clock is going to continue to run as opposed to stop, to allow the chains to reset in that sort of final window. Now, once you get past 2 minutes, there's really no difference, because the clock stops on the first down for reset, just like it does in the normal game. But I think, the early part of the fourth quarter, this is where I think it hurts comebacks, because not one score comebacks, but multi-score comebacks, some of the crazy comebacks that we see in college football, those just become a little bit less likely. But I agree with Chip and with Tom. It's not a huge deal. I mean, if we're lopping off 7 plays, that's 7 plays total, not 7 plays per team.
Mm-hmm.
That's like somewhere between like an 8 to 12% reduction in plays, in scoring, etc. That's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's maybe a possession.
Yeah.
Though 7 plays add up a little bit, in that in the transfer portal era, you want to try to get your backups some reps to keep them happy. Sometimes you want to, not get them reps so they don't get to showcase their wares and hit the portal elsewhere, right? If they have no game tape, whatever, but they still have access to their practice tape. So usually they can just show that if they're actually a good player. Do you have to strategize differently now to try to, how do you do load management? Are your starters more important compared to your depth in a scenario in which you don't have to play 70 plays a game? You're playing more like 60. Those are considerations. College rosters are much bigger than NFL rosters.
So do you think, going off of that and spinning it forward, do you think that there's a chance that with now the expanded playoff, which means, and we're going to see conferences like the SEC probably moving to 9 conference games once they expand to 16, you've got to play more games. Do you think this is going to lead to, and especially now that there's more at-large berths for playoff spots, we're going to see a lot more FCS games than we have in recent years? Or do you think the television networks will push back against having those games played, and because it doesn't make for great ratings?
I don't know about a lot more, but I think that the chance that we go to 0 FCS games or eliminate that is probably likely. That we that we don't end up playing fewer than we already do, because look, like Kentucky or Mississippi State is definitely going to want to keep that one FCS game if you expand this, right? And it allows you to play more of your backups, rest more of your starters, etc.